So thank you, Parag, and thank you, iCreate, for inviting me to speak, and thank you all for coming. I would like to make this super interactive because I don't want to be a monologue and talk, but I want to really, I'm here to learn from you and some of the burning problems that you may be solving and you may have questions for it. So what we would do is, out of the 30 minutes, I'm just going to talk 10 to max 15 minutes, and then you can give me a signal to stop, and then I want you to ask questions. So I was asked to give a journey of an Indian entrepreneur living in the US as an immigrant experience in Silicon Valley. So I'll do that in like 10 minutes, just past 20 years that I've spent in the Valley. I'm very grateful to Silicon Valley as an ecosystem. I'm a big beneficiary of it. So a few things. Number one, my views are very skewed towards technology. So I believe iCreate is about technology. So I've not done any businesses outside the technology world. I'm not in the biotech or some of the other areas. And then I built 3 companies. One was in mobile space called Mobile Area. Another company was in virtual currency payment system called PlacePan. The third company that I'm working on is an education platform company called EdCast. The fourth one, which is actually I consider that as my baby as a startup, is a non-profit actually. It's called Code for India. And we launched a Code for India chapter now here in Ahmedabad during the Vibrant Gujarat. We are also launching a very important initiative of Code for India called Skill Up India this afternoon in just about an hour at 3 o'clock. So when you get a chance, take a look at codeforindia.org and skillupindia.org. Just to quickly summarize kind of the common theme across all these companies, I think fundamentally you go through all the 4 or 5 different steps of starting and building a company and running it. Starting from ideation to building the team, to funding the company and scaling the business, and then eventually whatever exit that you want to help provide your investors and stakeholders or for yourself. There are challenges obviously at every stage of the company. Although everything looks very rosy and beautiful and glamorous and sexy from outside of Silicon Valley, the amount of hard work and the amount of no's that you have to hear from people, I'm sure all of you who are entrepreneurs who have all heard, every day you hear no, rejection, right? Does it sound familiar? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Does it in the evening? Do you feel very discouraged? And why is everybody saying no to me? Yes. Okay. All right. So it's nothing different, by the way. You know, almost every successful venture that looks as if like it's going like a rocket ship from outside, inside it's almost like think about a duck that floats in the water, and from outside the duck looks like so serene and nice and floating in the water. But you know what's under the water? You know what are the feet of those ducks doing? They're going like this, right? So it's exactly like that in a startup, which is from outside everything looks like, wow, this is all going great, but every single founder and CEO has to hustle, has to go through multiple no's. And I've gone through all of that, so that's, I'll quickly tell some of the personal story. One of the interesting story out of many startups, which actually, if you do YouTube, so I won't go into all the details, but there's a bunch of my talks on YouTube, so just put Karl Mehta and you will find them. But one of the stories which has gone pretty viral is the company PlacePan that we built from zero to $240 million in 4.5 years. When I first built the presentation, and I was going out to venture capital offices on Sandhill Road, I was rejected by 65 VCs over a span of 12 months, right? So this is a story of rejection, disappointment, frustration, everything, every negative word that you can pick from the dictionary, we went through that. And this is an important story because as an entrepreneur, the first experience that you're going to have is that, whatever the idea that you come up with, and, most likely you're going to get, heard 9 out of 10 times what you're going to hear back is not interesting, or people won't even reply to your emails, things like that. It's pretty normal. So the fact that, we stayed in the game for, 12 months and kept going to the next VC. There is not a single VC that I would have not gone to back in that 2005, almost like 9 years back, and tried to, so rather than being disappointed and feeling very dejected, we learned. So I think the key important lesson to learn here is that every time we heard no, we followed back and we asked them that, can you please tell us, we totally agree with you that we are not the right fit for you, but if you would just take 5 minutes of your time and tell us that what did you really not like here, right? And that every single feedback, incorporating, listening, and the most important thing is not being very defensive about your idea and not be discarding people's feedback when they tell you that this is not the right thing. That was the most important lesson learned, right? So very often, one of the biggest mistakes that most entrepreneurs do is that we are always full of our ideas, obviously, because if you're not full of your ideas, you would not be venturing into a new venture. But then there is a downside to that exact self-confidence. So, it's kind of like the perfect coin. On one side, you have tremendous confidence about what you're building, that's why you're venturing. But on the other side, that can blind you from taking feedback from people, which is critical in improving, because seldom any idea that you start with is ever going to make you successful just the way you started it, right? There's an enormous amount of iteration and pivoting that happens, and particularly I'm speaking obviously in a technology space, and in more so within technology, it is in software, maybe not in biotech or in other areas where you have a tremendous amount of deep research, and then after doing that 10 years of deep PhD type research, you come up with a formulation or a drug and then you take it to the market. The technology business today is all about consumer driven or and market driven. It's not about you can design or research a lot of different things, but if it is not going to get consumer adoption, so there's a very cool methodology that has been now developed based on failures of hundreds and thousands of startups in Silicon Valley. It's called the MVP. I'm sure you guys have read the book about it, which is called minimum viable product. And so this whole innovation, the process of innovation is all about taking feedback, and constantly iterating. So anyway, so that was the story about how difficult it was, even being in Silicon Valley. By the way, when I was going through that failure in terms of rejection, it was not that I was a first-time entrepreneur. I had already built and sold a company, Mobile Area, before I started Placement. So imagine that having a track record and having built and sold a company, and yet you go to the VCs who are your friends. That's why I could get 65 meetings. By the way, it's not easy to get even 65 meetings. If you do the math, it's almost like one VC meeting a week, right? And while you are building the company, taking those many meetings is not easy either. But the fact is that the reason why we were rejected 65 times, so it's very important to know this as well, that even though we were proven people, so from a team standpoint there was a lower risk, there was a tremendous amount of risk in the idea, because our idea was on the surface completely stupid, right? It was, anybody would look at it and we were saying that, we are going to make money by letting people buy, virtual items that don't exist in the physical world, right? And like the VCs would say, really? Like, why would people buy something that doesn't even exist? And how big is that market? And my answer was that I don't know how big is the market. All I know is that there are about 50 million gamers out there, and the game industry is shifting from its business model of being prepaid on a subscription basis to pay for performance. And I want to be that monetization platform that enables that transition. So we were so raw in our idea, and we were so early on in trying to predict that a shift in the market that we were expecting, and then we were trying to build a business around it. So the lesson learned there is that it's not that these VCs were bad or stupid or whatever, they missed the bus, and the guys who really didn't invest in us. But the reality was that, idea, if it is too early from its time, it's very hard to invest, even if the team is very solid, right? So it's not so easy to say that, okay, this is a rock solid team and we are just going to put the money into it, right? And even, we started EdCast just 18 months back, and we went through a Series A round, about 6 months ago, and even there, we had several rejections from many VCs. This is now a third or fourth time entrepreneur. And again, it's the same situation that, there are like 3 or 4 things that most VCs look for, investors look for, right? It's the team, the idea, the product market fit, and the model and all of that stuff. And over here again, in education is a very tough market to crack, because although it's $1 trillion market in the US and $4 trillion worldwide, but very few companies have actually built a big business around education. Highly regulated market, not very prone to change, very heavy resistance to change. So the fact is that every time when you are doing some great innovation or venturing into a space that is just emerging, you are likely to get a lot of rejection. And the way I have approached it is that I always like to go after the market that is going to happen, because I want to participate in a new trend and a new market that is happening, as opposed to going after an existing market and trying to grab a market share from existing players. So it always becomes very difficult to sell to the investors, because investors, you have to remember, they are not domain expert. Most of the VCs, if you go up and down the Sand Hill Road, or even here, you would hardly find anybody who has come from an education industry background. So, right there, you're pitching to somebody who has no idea about your industry, so they cannot literally validate or vouch about whether these trends are happening or not. So anyway, with that, I just want to give some background into some of my companies and some of the experiences, and more of the failure and the rejection type of experiences, so that you just feel that everything that you're going to go through, all the pains and the struggles and the sacrifice that you're going through, it's all normal. Okay? Nothing's abnormal. Alright, so with that, let's open it up for questions from entrepreneurs or students.
Yeah, one housekeeping note since we're running a little late, the people that are here for the speed dating session, I request that both the entrepreneurs as well as the venture capitalists please go to room 2 and 4. I think the people outside will guide you to room 2 and 4. 2 is for entrepreneur VC speed dating, and 4 is the panel presentations. So if you can head out there. Okay, so VCs and angels should go out now. The other people can go after 20 minutes. But please head out, because there is some logistics that they need to explain to you, whoever is part of the group. With that said, one thing that Karl didn't tell you is his company, PlaySpan, got sold to Visa for $250 million. Do the math. Just single-handed, right? And he has Visa and MasterCard fighting for his company. So that's not a bad position to be in. With that, questions. Who?
You spoke about MVP, the minimum viable product. These days, people are tending more and more towards minimum marketable product, even focusing on aesthetics while launching the basic functionalities. What is your take on that? Do you agree to the MMP model?
Yeah, I think, we don't have to get too much lost into the spend engineering time and burn your engineering cycles into things that you may find out doesn't have a market for it, right? So whether it is a minimum marketable product or a minimum viable product or a minimum whatever you call it, right? And I think the fundamental thing there is this, that go and get as quickly as possible to the first customer. If you compare again to the pharma industry, right? I have seen so many entrepreneurs and my friends and people who have spent like 3 years, 4 years into some pharmaceutical drug, development. And just to find out that after all the investment in time and money, they can't get an FDA approval or whatever, or the market changed, or some other big competitor created something, right? So you don't want to do that in technology industry, right? You can build, instead of if your product requires 10 features, don't wait for all the 10 features to be developed to go to your first customer. Develop the first one feature, get feedback, second, get feedback.
And one more question, please, may I ask?
Yeah.
That is like, are you building to exit, or are you building to create a legacy? Now, I really am in a dilemma, so I wanted to know, from a veteran like you, do you really have that mindset when you're developing something, if you're developing it to exit or, to sustain?
So depending on which investor is asking you a question, because there are short-term investors whom you should generally avoid, and they would ask this question, which is a bad question to ask to an entrepreneur, in some ways, that, are you building for exit? Because first of all, as a principle, no entrepreneur should be building a company for exiting. Right? You have to build something with the mindset that you want to really build a product or a technology or a service that is going to last forever, you know. And once you build, and then over the time, when there is obviously, there are market situations where someone is willing to give you an exit, that's fine, that's a different situation. But if you try to build a company for exit, you are more likely to fail. Right?
Thank you so much.
And so be careful that when an investor asks that question, sometimes they're also testing you, because if there's a long-term investor, and if you say, yeah, I have all these exit plans, look at the slide I have, this is how I will exit, he's thinking in his mind, I don't want to invest in this guy.
Right.
And you might be feeling very good that you have a beautiful slide talking about how would you exit.
Thank you.
Another thing Karl didn't tell you is he's also an active investor in Menlo Ventures. If you do your research, they are the 7th largest venture company in the US, maybe even in the world. I don't know if they're in the world or whatever. But he himself is a VC. Yes, question?
Startup and making a prefabricated homes for villages in India and poor people. I just want to know that how much a role in your company investor plays. Like, do they call you every week that what have you done, or a month, or you get any feedback, or do you, I mean, how much
Well,
it is?
it depends situation, right? So you have to know that where you stand. You know, some entrepreneurs, they say, look, you know, I really know what my business is. I'm very confident of what I'm doing. I need funding, but I just need passive investors who are never going to call me back after they write the check. Then you go after those people. And there are people available like that. And then there are investors who have made their money, they're free, they have a lot of time, and they would always want to invest in companies where they can go and spend their time because their wife wants them to get out of the house. So that's why they'll become an investor, so that because nobody's going to give them a job, because for whatever reason, so they invest in companies so that they can spend all the time and go and get a free lunch from their investor companies and spend time with the entrepreneur and feel good about it. So you have to see which spectrum you want to hang out
I
with.
mean, I was thinking on the way around that maybe if we call them and ask for help, then because he's very busy, you know, I mean, most of these.
Yeah, so, you know, and then obviously there's a middle, those are the two extremes, and then there's middle where there are good solid investors who you would call them when you need advice, but otherwise, you know, they don't bother you because they're too busy in their life, they let you alone.
Yes, right there.
Question is, do you agree with the points of Ben Horowitz in his book, The Hard Things About the Hard Thing, and his criticism about traditional authors like Jim Collins?
Well, you know, Ben is a character, so when you write a book, I'm writing a book too currently, you have to sometimes talk something at a, you know, it's just like our Hindi movies, right? You have to show some exaggeration. Because if you don't exaggerate in a Hindi movie, if they don't show all these opulence and beautiful homes and people dancing and beautiful clothes, you're not going to enjoy the movie. So, you know, sometimes those books have a lot of that exaggeration. I mean, Jim Collins is a great solid author, right? And he wrote some of those books, which is, you know, Built to Last. Well, an excellent book, right? But anyway, the Silicon Valley guys, sometimes, you know, they have a different opinion. Yeah.
So the people that are doing the speed dating, you can head out, your dates are waiting for you.
Said that you met like 65 VCs in 1 year. I would like to ask you a simple question that explaining your idea to such a variety of people, 65 different people with different mindset, what was your strategy? I mean, there are people with different backgrounds, right? You need to explain your idea to everyone else. Everyone with a different, belonging to a different field. And your idea belongs to a different field. How did you tackle that situation?
Well, I mean, what you're trying to say is that you have to do some adjustment in your pitch based on your audience, and that you, to some extent, you have to do. I mean, the core of your idea and what you're saying doesn't change, but the way you present it changes depending on how much experience the other party has in your space. Because if someone is really well versed, you need to. But the fundamental thing remains across any audience, which is you should be able to communicate your idea like an elevator pitch in 5 minutes. Because generally there's a brain research that says from MIT that the human mind is capable of focusing maximum on an 8-minute intervals. So after every 8 minutes, we kind of zone out. So you have to know that your audience, if you're not making your pitch and getting that within that zone of 8 minutes, you lost the person. And there's also another study that says that, you know, when you go to a venture capital firm, right, and they make you sit and then present, right? The decision of that meeting is generally decided within the first 10 minutes of the meeting, right? So it's not like that, it's opposite of the cricket match. In cricket match, anything can happen in the last 10 minutes. in a venture capital, in a VC pitching for, meeting for 1 hour, the first 10 minutes the outcome is decided, the rest 50 minutes is just blabbering.
That's coming from a VC.
I wanted to hear that.
My name is Vidit Shah. I'm incubated at iCreate. I wanted to know what was your experience when you went for the first time, for the first company to a VC, and like what was your learning from that? Because like once you've gone, then you know what is going to happen. But what is your first time experience?
Sure. So the first time experience, I think I learned the most, because generally in the first rejection, you learn the most. And what I learned was that I was super unsophisticated in how I was presenting my idea. Okay. So that is one area that, a lot of us, we have to learn, because, the Americans are very good at sophistication, and they can take a $10 product and sell it for $100 and make the customer feel like, they just gave away the product. And sometimes, I'm not stereotyping Indians, but Indians will sell a $10 product for like $8 and leave money on the table, because we are just not sophisticated in packaging stuff nicely. But I'm sure there are outliers. So
Yes, so over there.
Answer in two formats, as a technocrat entrepreneur and another as a VC. See, there are government policies which support a technocrat. Also, there is a CGTMS scheme of nationalized banks. Up to 1 crore funds they give without any collateral. So, is this not a good media to bring the project to a level where the VC can understand it better and he gets more sophisticated in lastly what you said? Thank you.
Oh, so just to understand your question properly, are you saying that there's a scheme here that gives away 1 crore rupees for startups?
Up to 1 crore.
Okay.
No, that is the startup policy of Gujarat government is different. That is latest. I am talking of a CGT MSE format of central government. All banks are supposed to support a technocrat for funds up to 1 CR without any collateral security.
Yeah, I don't think it is very helpful. I mean, at the stage where India is today, it is a good thing if there is some seed money is available, because generally I think there is not a very good ecosystem yet developed in India for seed stage funding.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. I already have 3 technocrats who have already grown. So it is just like like when you said you had good friends who made you make 65 meetings.
Yeah.
Technocrats can be well advised to get hold of a good professional who will not take any advance money.
Right.
They will be with him, he will be with him in that support. He will take some success fees.
Right.
And he will be like cutting down their burden on time and energy by making them meet the right people.
Right.
And in between, good bankers.
Let's keep this a question answer. I don't want it to be a dialogue because there's other people there. Is your
Sorry, I may not have understood your question properly. Are you saying is it good or not?
Yeah, as a technocrat, would you like this system to happen? And another as a VC, would you like somebody who's already
I think yes, for current stage where India is, it is a good thing for entrepreneurs. Whatever money you can get, good for entrepreneurs to get money. Okay, but once the economy evolves, it is not necessary. Like in US, you don't need this.
Okay, I will further supplement.
I would cut you off there. You can have a conversation with
Yeah, let's talk right about
other people as well.
It will get more value.
Yeah, sure.
And he can point you to 1 crore for your housing project.
Any project, sir, any project. They are waiting for a product. It's only for manufacturing.
No, but if there's government funding,
Yeah, but that's
It's a loan.
It is for industry. It is not for us.
It's a loan for
It is not to develop.
Oh, it's a loan.
It's
It's a loan.
It's a loan.
Okay, one last question.
one question, that's it. One other question.
Hi, investors treating behaving differently in West and versus India. So what are the key challenges that you would face in US that you don't face in India or vice versa?
I don't have much experience of trying to pitch investors. I've never pitched an investor here in India.
As a VC?
Yeah. I mean, there are differences. As an investor, you find, one of the things that we find here is that there's a lot of talent in India, but the business plans are not kind of as developed or as polished as we see that in the US. right? Even at the same stage of the company. And maybe it is just, they don't have that much preparation, work going in, or it's not too much depth into it, or whatever it is. But I think there is an enormous opportunity to just help entrepreneurs here in preparing them how to present to an investor. So incubators like iCreate are very much needed because they can help this, to make this thing really transition out well. I think the US is a long, it's pretty well-known story, so I'll just focus on India. Sorry. Any other, that lady there? Last one?
Feel the new business model in education in India, especially an entrepreneurial model for education in India?
Sure. Well, I'm passionate about educating 50 million people. There's only 30 million people in colleges, but the other 250 million people will have to be trained. There's a huge gap between what the academia produces and what the industry needs. Most of my friends who run companies here and are employers, they say that the people who are coming out of 4-year colleges here, they can't even hire them. They're not even employable. You will train them for a year, 2 years before they know any skill set. So there's a tremendous opportunity in professional education, professional development, and there's an opportunity for non-traditional providers, like not the traditional 4-year colleges. They will have that business for degrees, granting degrees and diplomas, but there is a much bigger opportunity beyond the degrees and diplomas in terms of creating a culture of lifelong learning, continuous learning, on the go and just-in-time learning, on-demand learning, and the fact that we have large penetration of 700, 800 million mobile devices, how can we make people productive and keep learning on the go? So there is a huge opportunity for online and mobile technologies to fill the gap in A, expanding the access to education, B, improving the quality of education, and C, reducing the cost of education, and D, aligning the education between academia and industry so that we can have a more skilled, powerful workforce that can help us achieve the growth rate that we want to achieve.
Can I ask one question here? Can I ask a question related to
Last one, he has a press call that he has to be at in about 6 minutes.
Yeah. Regarding education, the business model, in India, in most of the cases, it's even today, it's not affordable. As we speak of higher education, many good talent, they cannot afford. That's why you have this caste-based reservation systems. So, if you adopt any US model or anything of that sort, it increases the cost. So, for the rural education system, if you think there are social impact investors, there are wonderful business models available, especially for medical education. Now I'm an engineer, the apprentice-based education, many are sitting idle because there is no business out in the world. The question is, how do you make the education sustainable and quite cheap for Indians, and can you throw some light on that?
That we can definitely leverage, fundamentally we can leverage technology to reduce cost, improve quality, and we cannot just depend on this brick and mortar buildings and old type of delivering, lecture type education. That's not going to work. We have to have active learning. We have to have, just like what you said, like apprentice-based and project-based learning, because one of the things that we find problematic with fresh graduates is that they will write everything, like I know Java language and PHP, they will fill up a whole 3-page of resume. You put them and ask them to write a piece of code, they can't even write a code. So fundamentally, that project-based learning will help. And spending 2 years in college and then 1 year as an apprentice in real industry and then going back into college, things like that could help. It could also help reduce the cost because the industry the employer can pay part of the cost because now they want that particular person. So there are many models from many countries that we can learn from.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karl.
All right, thank you.
We really appreciate it.